G'day mates, it's your host Mary O'Neill Phillips and you are listening to Country Outdoors Podcast. G'day mates, it's Mary O'Neill Phillips here. I'm so excited that you guys are back. It is Season 5 Country Outdoors Podcast and our very first guest for the season is singer-songwriter outdoorsman Colby Acuff. So I have never been to Idaho. We're going to start at the beginning because that's, where your story starts as being a kid out in Idaho. Is that where you lived your whole life? Growing up?
Yeah. I've only lived in Idaho and then Nashville.
And 4 generations of being out there, right? That's
really good.
I made it myself.
It's very good.
Yeah.
I was drinking Folgers, so this is
fantastic. There we go. Tell us about life growing up at home, 4 generations. Were you ranchers?
No.
What's
not
the
at
story?
All. So basically growing up, I guess it starts, we were in Missouri originally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I'm actually a 5th generation.
Wow.
But it's kind of, I'm not 100% sure. But basically family moved to southern Idaho and they were farmers. They're like a very small farm. My grandfather was the very first in that smaller lineage that went to Idaho from Missouri to go to college. Him and his sister went to University of Idaho. And they were getting ag degrees, and basically my great-great-grandfather and mother both got sick, took ill, and they died during his senior year of college. And him and his sister didn't have enough money to get the farm back, so the state took the farm, foreclosed it, sold it. They both graduated, and they both had ag degrees, but they didn't have a farm to go back to. Mm-hmm. So he got a job working for basically ag appraisal for the federal government.
Wow.
During the Dust Bowl and the Depression. So it's like 1936, I think is the year.
Oh.
So they put him in a Model A and had him drive from Coeur d'Alene, which is my hometown, to Kansas to appraise farmland. And
that's got to have been a sting for him, right?
He gets there and he's like, okay, well, your land's worth shit because it's the Dust Bowl. It's in the Midwest. So he drove all the way back. Then he said, basically, fuck that. I'm going to go get my real estate license and start a real estate company. And it was originally an appraisal company because he knew how to appraise land because he had just had that job with the federal government and he had an ag degree. So it started as just he was just going to be a land appraiser or a real estate appraiser. And then it became a real estate brokerage. And then my dad got into that as well. And then, by the time I come around, we're no longer farmers.
But you're 5th generation. So I'm assuming that's got a lot to do with your nostalgia towards frontier heritage and,
Yeah.
Do you think
Yeah, and you just really can't get away from it either when you're out there. It's, I don't know, the town has changed a lot since I grew up there.
Rural America has been destroyed.
Yeah.
And, you can say what you want about the government or whatever, but from my perspective of what I perceive, because, my family have a farm in Australia growing up and we don't have the inheritance taxes and all these things, which is just destroying the American farming families, ag America.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think also my hometown area is a lot more, it's very similar to what would be West Virginia.
Yeah, okay.
Or
the Davison brothers?
Sorry?
Do you know the Davison brothers?
Mm-mm.
You should, you need to meet them. There's some West Virginia boys.
I love West Virginia.
Yeah.
But once again, Appalachia and Northern Idaho so specifically are so alike.
Yeah.
Which is very funny because Southern Idaho and Northern Idaho are basically 2 totally different places.
Yeah.
Almost different states.
Yeah.
Really, Western Montana and Northern Idaho are more of the same thing.
Yeah.
But I grew up, it was a lumber town. And it was a mining valley. So, and then there's a bunch of lakes there.
Tough people.
Yeah. And
beautiful.
Long winters.
Right.
And a lot of snow.
Rugged.
And really rugged. Yeah. So can't really get out of it.
Yeah.
So you're always in some kind of outdoor, thing.
Yeah.
But now it's changed so much because they shut down all the mills and it's a resort town and it's a tourist town now because there's a huge, beautiful lake.
So how does that
make
you feel about your hometown? It's one side good because there's more jobs and then the other side you're seeing it destroyed with tourism?
Yeah, I mean,
You've also got a lot more people coming in and hunting in spots that you probably yeah.
It's
and
just
destroying it, and probably like
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna, because I am an outdoorsman.
Yeah.
And I was so into it for so long. I'm not gonna be like, well, you shouldn't come here and do it because it's
100%.
probably one of the best places in the country for. I mean, in that area, especially if you're gonna want to go fly fishing, or if you want to go elk hunting. I mean, those probably. I mean, there's not very many places better than northern Idaho, western Montana.
Yeah.
On the planet.
But then those little spots that you had, your little hidey holes and stuff are getting like, a spot of it.
It's not that big.
Yeah.
I mean, the panhandle of Idaho, it's, from my hometown, it's 30 minutes to be in Washington, and you're an hour to Montana.
Yep.
You're 2.5 hours to the Canadian border. And then obviously the rest is Idaho. So like in that area, there's not a ton. And when the population grows by, I mean, when I grew up, the whole county was probably like 115,000, the county, and there's 5 cities in the county.
Yeah.
And now the county is almost 200,000, and that really took off about 5 years ago. So it's like a massive amount of people in a very small space in a very short amount of time. So I think, I don't know if it's necessarily destroying it, because I can't also say that, like, I mean, the mines and the mills, they almost, like, the mines themselves almost killed every single wild native West Slope cutthroat in the Coeur d'Alene River. Yeah. But then they, had a bunch of programs, brought them back, and now it's super healthy. Mm-hmm. And I like that it's a popular trout stream. I think it's really good.
And if people are buying licenses, they're still contributing to conservation.
And it's good for the guides. Right. You know, when I was a guide there, it was like, it didn't really get popular as like a fishing spot, I feel like, until even like COVID.
So you were a fishing guide, right? Mm-hmm. So, and prior to that, you had gone through college and you were studying finance. Is that right? Economics. That's such a, like, how does that, I mean, was that like, okay, this is what I need to do to make money, and then your heart and just everything else was like, this is what you need to do to be happy?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I was really fortunate. I had like a lot of opportunity. So I had a choice, basically. I didn't have to, go do landscaping the rest of my life, which was what I was doing in high school. Yeah. And I've been playing in bars, fronting a band since I was 11, kind of early, but.
Yeah, and today I'd be shocked, but, we all grew up running around being hooligans in the street. Times have changed a lot.
Yeah. Like when I was a kid, my dad got me my very first gig at this place called the 1210 Tavern. It was a full-on smoking bar.
Love it.
And you called the 60-40, 60% smoke, 40% air.
Yeah.
And I fronted a little band in there. Yeah. It was great. Yeah. And then like, you start getting into high school, I was making, weekend gig money, which for an adult isn't great, but for a kid in high school, it's phenomenal. Yeah. Making $500 a weekend. I got no expenses really.
Teaching you grit and work ethic as well.
Yeah, and I was working like a dog. Plus then in the summer I would do gigs and also go lay sod and run front end loaders and work landscaping. Yeah. And so, I don't know, by the time I got to college, I think I was pretty groomed to do whatever I wanted, but also like the way it was set up. Obviously, my family was in real estate. Right. I was set up probably for more of a white collar situation. Yeah. And I knew it well just because my dad was like, you're going to have to know. I want you to know at least how to invest in stuff, and I'm going to teach you stuff, in that economics world. So I went to school for economics. I got out. Meanwhile, also, while this is happening, I was truant my senior year of high school because I spent all my time fly fishing and duck hunting.
Love it.
And I basically didn't go to college because I spent a lot of time steelheading and duck hunting and fly fishing and doing all the things, I was constantly trying to be outside.
Did you have any teachers that were like on your side with that when you turn up late and you're like, sorry, I've been in the woods all morning?
Yeah, I mean, some of them. But like, there's still.
You still have to.
You got to go to school. Yeah. I was like, do I? I don't know. I mean, I graduated with good grades. Yeah. But regardless.
Bigger priorities.
No, I don't know. I feel like I've always just ran at 100 miles an hour all the time. It's always running on zero, go, go, go. Mm-hmm. And that was a big part of it. In school, I didn't have time for school. That was just the reality of the situation. Mm-hmm. And I did like my senior project on being a fly fishing guide and conservation. So it's like always been a goal of mine to actually do that for a job. I almost didn't go to college. I was going to move to North Dakota and chase ducks from the Canadian border to Arkansas and back. And I've always dreamt of being a guide up until this point. And so I finally have a conversation with myself where I was like, am I more than just a musician and a fisherman and a hunter? Is there like another thing out there that I would really like? So I said, okay, I'll give economics a try. And I ended up falling in love with it, honestly. It's kind of like, I wouldn't call it a hobby, but it's one of the things that I do really like to do. So when I got out, I thought, oh, well, like I could do this. This would be fun. But then you find out, to be an economist, that might as well be a fly fishing guide. I mean, there's just like no money in it. It's a really tough job. Everyone hates you because any prediction you make is just based on theory. It's not an exact science. It's a lot of hours. It's a lifetime of work, blah, 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 blah. So then it was like, well, obviously the only move to use the degree in is to go into the financial sector. Mm-hmm. So it's a week out of college. I get a phone call from a family friend of mine who worked at a Merrill Lynch office. He brought me in. He's like, dude, I'll hire you right now.
Wow.
Work for Merrill Lynch. You can be a stockbroker, and I'll sell you my book of business and turnkey, like, great opportunity.
Where?
It was in Coeur d'Alene, but Coeur d'Alene has a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because it's like the Kardashians have a place on the lake, and
right.
I mean, it's Orange County vacation.
Right.
A lot of money. And, besides the money, I was just like, oh, I just don't know if I can do that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to do that. Everything else is great. It was really nice of him to bring me in. But I left the interview in a nice attire, and I got a call from my fly shop. And they were like, hey, we just got your rod back. I broke it like 6 months ago, and I had sent it in. So I pull up, and he's like, have you ever thought about being a guide? I said, yeah, every day. And he's like, well, do you want a guide? And I said, yes. And I called Merrill Lynch, and I told them I was going to be a fly fishing guide.
That's amazing.
And it just and then I'd always been playing music while I was doing it, and just started writing songs.
So when did you, who took you on your first hunt?
My dad.
Yeah?
Yeah, for
How
sure.
old were you?
Well, I'd been sitting in a goose blind before I could even shoot geese.
With him?
I go with my BB gun, just 7 years old. And it was always one of those things where my dad would get ready to go on duck hunts. Because when I was a kid, we used to go up to Canada and we'd hunt for like a whole weekend, at a time, go for 3 or 4 days, come back, and then go the next weekend, 3 or 4 days, go to school, go back. And we had 2 family friends that we'd go up to BC and hunt these little lakes off the Kootenai River. And whenever he'd get ready to go on those trips, I'd be like, it wasn't like the classic little kid, like, don't leave. It was like, I want to go.
Yeah.
And he'd always be like, no, you got to wait, He played it really well. And by the time I was like able to just sit in a goose blind, I was probably 7.
And so tell me about that. What does that look like? Are you guys what are you wearing? Have you got food with you? Is he prepping you so that you enjoy it? Or are you just
it's pretty intense. It's actually funny to me. This is not a dig at all, but duck hunting in the South is way different. And I also feel like duck hunting in the South.
What, you mean biscuits and coffee?
Yeah, they just take it so almost like some people take it really seriously, and I feel like some people it's just not, And for us, I guess it'd be a little different if I was duck hunting and it was, 40 degrees outside. Boy, that'd be awesome. But for us, we're sitting in a goose blind in December or a duck blind. Yeah. And we always hunt on water because we're right on the Rocky Mountain Range and there's not a ton of fields, honestly. It's not like the Midwest where you can go and you're always sitting in a pit blind. So we're digging into cattails and hunting wild rice and ponds and trying to find moving water because by the time you hit about Thanksgiving, it's, 25 degrees outside. Yeah. So everything's froze up, And I've never liked hunting in coats. Mm-hmm. So I've always just worn a sweatshirt, like a thermal sweatshirt and then waders. Mm-hmm. Usually like a beanie. Mm-hmm. And, you're breaking ice at 3 a.m., getting decoys out, shooting lights, whatever, it'd be 6:30, and after daylight savings, it can go up to 7:30, but it's cold. Mm-hmm. I think the coldest hunt I've had is -25.
Yeah.
We hunted a warm spring and just absolutely slaughtered them. It was awesome.
I've ice fished up in Lake Minnetonka with a -57 windshield, but we're in a Yeti.
Yeah. You gotta be. The worst hunt I've had is I got a flat tire and it was -7 outside.
Yeah.
And we were on the side of the highway. The wind was blowing. Probably with the wind chill was like -30. I mean, changing the tire in that.
Oh, and it's so cold that the follicles in your nostrils, like when you breathe in, you feel it.
Yeah, you can't breathe.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets so cold. But the coldest it'll ever get is about 18 degrees for me because at 17 degrees, all the water in the air freezes.
Yeah.
That's like when you start getting the icicles everywhere. And that is just cold. But if there's water in the air, it's like 18 degrees with a wind. There can be fog. That's just cold. You're wet and it's cold enough to get hypothermia. So
is your dad still around?
He's not. He passed in February, unfortunately.
I am so sorry. My dad also passed.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
But he showed me everything and we were big. Like I'm big on dogs, birds, shotguns. Those are the 3 things that I'm like. I always said like, oh, I'll go kill a deer this year. But rut is the same time as when the northerns come down.
So this will be your first fall without him?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, it will be my first fall without him. But he had to stop hunting a couple of seasons ago. Okay. So, yes, it will be the first one. But
so what do you take away from him and the way that he raised you in the outdoors?
Well, it's I think there's a buddy of mine always used to say, because we were like in high school, we were the duck hunters, and there's about 3 of us. There were 3 or 4 of us maybe. It wasn't that popular until really like Duck Dynasty comes out.
Yeah,
like duck hunting was a frowned upon, almost like
it really blew it up.
No one gave a shit about it.
Yeah,
everyone was so into killing big whitetail and elk, and it was great because they didn't even start making duck hunting specific shotguns really until Benelli comes out with the Super Black Eagle. So, anyway, he just was like, you got to take a lot of pride in being an outdoorsman because duck hunting, it wasn't like a redneck hunting event. It was like an outdoorsman sporting event, and we took it super seriously. But also, you got to have fun with your friends. It's a camaraderie thing. It's just about being outside. And I don't know. I think a lot of the hunting experience was just like driving in the fact that you are taking an animal's life. You want it to be safe. You want it to be fun. And you want to do this probably for the rest of your life.
For sure. Yeah, we talk about that a lot, especially with, our different partners we work with, Mossy Oak and everything. And it's like the kill is such a small part of the entire experience, and that's why we all keep coming back, because it's the camaraderie, it's the sharing stories in the blind, it's all the mishaps that happen in between, it's the maybe you feel God in a certain way when you're in the woods, all of that stuff in between. I hope that this fall is a really special one for you, because I feel like your dad's going to be there with you regardless and watching over you. And
yeah, I hope so too. I feel like for me, I don't know. I hope I can get in a duck blind this fall. That's like my big thing, but I just don't have a lot of time. But I'm definitely going to go back. I'll go back in early December. I'll try to get 2 or 3 hunts in there. And then I'm also going to go steelheading for like 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that'll be like kind of my big thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about music a little bit. So, you're obviously this year is the big tour, at the big tour. And so you're on the road a lot, and then are you trying to combine stops with hunts in between? I know we tried to get you on a turkey hunt earlier in the year, and it's very hard.
It just depends on where I am.
Yeah.
And it's like if I'm passing through, I'd love to do it. And I think for me, getting on a hunt is a little harder, but getting on a fishing trip has been the easier one for me.
Right.
So like I've done, I think this year I've got to get out. I did 2 fly fishing videos this year, and both of those were for multiple days. So it's not much, but like I'll probably get out, if I include with what I want to do in the fall and like in the winter, I'll probably fish 20 times this year.
Is fishing like top of the pop for you, or like if you had to have one thing a season?
Yeah.
it would be like fly fishing?
Yeah, it's hard for me because fly fishing all of a sudden became my entire life.
Yeah.
For a while. I mean, I was
Yeah.
doing it 120 to 150 days a year.
Did that make you get over it a little bit, or?
Not really, because there was always something that was, because I always describe like fly fishing as like archery hunting, where
it's a skill.
you know, if you get tired of using the rifle, you're like, I want something more out of it, out of this sport, you go to the bow.
Right.
So gear fishing
is
very similar. I grew up gear fishing, and I was like, I like hunting more than I like fishing.
Yeah.
But once I switched over to fly fishing, then it was like,
is it the technique that's like?
It's just harder.
Yeah.
It's just the hardest way to catch fish.
Yeah.
You know, besides like maybe hand lighting or
Yeah.
something. But
Yeah.
for me, it's you're tying something to mimic what they eat,
right,
based off of
and
feathers.
you're actually tying it. It's
Yeah.
like setting up your own bow.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's just more involved. And then like you go to like the whole steelheading thing, which is where, yeah, like once I become a trout guide, now I'm pretty efficient in catching trout. So I'm guiding, I'm catching a lot of trout, catching a lot of fish, getting into that kind of thing. But then I, want to go catch a steelhead, which people who are unfamiliar with steelhead in the Northwest, they're dinosaurs. I mean, if you catch like a what's called a bee run, clearwater steelhead, and it's wild, it's millions of years of genealogy that you're catching. Literally, they were around when the dinosaurs were around.
Wow.
B, they're the largest creature, like related to like the largest salmonoid to ever exist on the planet. They're the only ones left. And they're also like the canary in the coal mine for all of the Northwest rivers and fisheries.
So that's like your number one. How many have you caught?
Oh, shit, probably 15, maybe 20.
When you were guiding, is there like guys that would come in and be like, if you can put me on this, I'll give you...
I won't guide it. It's too hard.
Yeah.
People, and I know a couple guys who guide steelhead, and they're amazing guides, and you have to just be willing to, like for me, I will guide trout any day of the week.
Yeah.
I love guiding trout. Most of the time when you're a guide and you're, doing a trout fishing trip, the stakes are medium to low. And, like if you don't catch a trophy fish, you'll probably get into a nice one. It's hard to land them, and not only that, but you can always get them into fish. Steelhead, never guaranteed, and you're paying a lot of money to go try to catch a ghost. So it's not exactly, I don't think it's the most fun client to guide relationship.
It's like another level to a muskie.
Yeah, because they're not eating.
Yeah. Okay.
They swim from, so like basically there's a bunch of steelhead that live in Russia, steelhead that live in the Northwest. And when they're born in the river, and they're just like a giant steelhead.
Because I don't know anything about them, so like
I'll explain.
Tell me.
Yeah.
Okay,
So they are like a giant rainbow trout.
Okay.
That's what they are. And they're born, they're just in the river, just like any trout would normally be born. They're born usually, they hatch in like a small tributary. And they live in the river system for a couple years until there's a genetic change in their body where they start to be able to breathe brackish water. So like they start to wanting to breathe salt water. And they can know this and swim from Idaho to the Pacific Ocean, which is around 650 miles. They have to swim over 9 dams throughout the Snake River and the Columbia River. And once they end up in the ocean, they're a jack, or I guess they kind of become a jack in the river, but then they end up in the ocean, not like a jack crevalle, but that's like, they're called a jack in their species. And then they live in the ocean for a couple years, and they swim all the way up to Alaska, where they commingle with all the steelhead from Russia. So like all the steelhead on the planet eventually like go to live in this little big area where all the currents combine in the northern part.
Wow. And
then they get a feeling of it's time to reproduce, and they all start to migrate back to the rivers. And they will lay their eggs within 6 inches of where they hatched.
That's insane.
It's thousands of miles. It's a whole life cycle.
I really want to do that.
Really hard on the fish.
Yeah.
And so
So so the survivors make it back.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you show up and it's
So if you can,
25 degrees outside, you're in Scabland Desert.
Do you have any photos of you with?
Oh, yeah.
I would love to see one.
Yeah, they're huge. It's because like some of them are
so
big,
cool.
some of them are small, but they're all important. They and there's hatchery programs because they've had real problems with population size and density.
So, yeah, and I'm sure as, the waterways are getting more polluted and all of that stuff as well, just like we're seeing everywhere. Wow.
So and I think everyone's trying to figure out how they can bring them back, and it's not like they're completely dying out, but it's not like it used to be, just like everything, honestly.
Well, they're trying to bring the woolly mammoth back up in Wyoming.
Yeah, I think they should focus on steelhead first.
I just keep saying, have you not watched Jurassic Park? We know how that turned out.
Yeah,
what are you going to do when one of these things escape the zoo, mate?
Why don't we fix what we what we have?
Exactly.
It's like the classic thing of why don't we go live on Mars? Like, why don't we fix the planet?
100%.
This is way better than Mars.
I know.
Even if we made Mars inhabitable.
Oh gosh.
Sorry, I've
100%.
Fishing pictures. Okay, so like this is a big one.
Okay.
This is probably my biggest bee run.
Wow.
But yeah, they're
beautiful.
Yeah.
So where was this taken?
That's on the Snake River.
So is this the same Snake River that runs through Jackson?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I fished on the Snake River.
It's one of the longest rivers in the country.
Gotcha.
It's the entire Idaho border except for the Montana side.
And so is it catch and release?
Yeah. So this one is wild, which is why I was so excited about this. It's a true bee run, and they clip the back fin on hatchery fish. So this is a wild bee run fish. And anything that's wild, you have to catch and release. Mm-hmm. But you can bonk the hatchery fish, which I'm a big fan of keeping the hatchery fish. I think my biggest complaint about the hatchery fish is that, you make them. That's another big thing I don't like about them. When you get rid of natural selection and it becomes, we are going to make just selection.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of those fish can...
people in a pen.
A lot of those fish they can carry a lot of diseases. Yeah. They can be sterile.
Yeah.
And not only that, but a big problem with the change, steelhead are a little bit more difficult because similar to like a salmon, they have to go through that change in process where they go from smolt to jack so they can breathe brackish water. If that change doesn't happen in a steelhead, they become a rainbow trout. And they don't like become a steelhead. They kind of like get in the ocean and eat the krill and get big. And then that section of genealogy is kind of done.
So where did you educate yourself on conservation just generally? Self-education?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always whenever I had an opportunity, whether it was in high school or in college for my degree, whenever I had an opportunity to do a project, I'd always pick something outdoor based. Yeah. So my final project at University of Idaho was the economic impact of steelhead in the state of Idaho. And so I did a whole...
There we go. That makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah, so I did an entire project based on why are what's wrong with steelhead? What are the solutions? Which is the best solution based on data?
And so what is the solution that you found? Or that you suggest or potentially?
There's a couple things. One, the biggest problem with steelhead is that we just don't know that much about them. We, just lump them in with salmon forever. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until probably 20 years ago they finally made them their own species, which is insane because they are like a trout that...
And they're a dinosaur.
Yeah, they're like a sea-run trout.
Right.
But that being said, the biggest problem is that they go out to the ocean. So if something happens in the ocean that depletes the amount of steelhead population, and then they come back to the rivers the next year, we're looking at the river data because we count fish over the dam. Well, if there's less fish to jump over the dam than there were that went out the last year, what is that ensuing? Well, it's probably saying that something happened in the ocean.
And so what are the common mishaps in the ocean?
Typically, it's something to do with seismic activity, where you can have an earthquake I mean, if it happens, especially like where they like to go,
Mm-hmm.
no one really goes up there. It's in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean,
Right.
kind of where Russia and Alaska kind of meet.
Yeah.
It's just like not a lot of people are going up there. It's too rough.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely been things like where there's an earthquake in the mantle there or whatever. That was probably not very scientific, but basically where the earth can like come open and then it releases like a huge heat bubble and it fries all their krill that they eat and all the shrimp and all the shit that they like to eat, and it probably fries a lot of them too, and then kills them all off. It could also be a disease. It could be something that comes from the other river on the other side of the world. You never know.
Right.
But there's problems with that. And then I think my second biggest one, the one that we can control, is hatcheries.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure. I think it's a decent solution, but it's a Band-Aid.
So where are the biggest hatcheries like now for them?
There's a ton of them. I mean, there's a couple in Idaho, and I get what they're doing, and I like what they're doing because they're trying to maintain the species. But the data, the only real inflection on the data that I have from things we can control, especially compared to dams, this is not going to be a super popular opinion, honestly.
To not fish.
Well, everybody wants to take out the dams.
Yeah.
And I guess I understand it, but there's not a huge correlation if you look at the data between the times that dams are put in and the time that steelhead start to decline in population. But there's almost a 1-to-1 of when you introduce the hatcheries.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you get over that argument?
I just say, look at the data.
Yeah.
I drew the data when I was in college. It's not that hard. And I'm not even for or against dams. I'm very neutral on dams. My point is, if you take them out, I think it'll be the same.
Right.
I don't think it'll change too much.
Mm-hmm.
What you see is that when you put a dam in, though, the very first year that the dams are in, the fish don't necessarily understand what this obstacle is.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that they don't breed. So it's the only time that breaks the cycle of the steelhead spawning not in the same place they were born.
Yeah.
But all that means is that that steelhead that was just born in this new spot will go to that spot.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really see a decline in population.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next year, what you see maybe less fish going over, like Lower Granite Dam is the dam that gets them into Idaho from Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So we might see less fish going into Idaho, but that could be because 10 years prior, the fish's mother laid eggs at the dam prior. But you're not seeing a total decrease in the amount of steelhead coming into the Columbia.
We need to get you go and speak for all the DNR agencies up there.
I know, but I don't know. Like, I'm also kind of like, because I think they might take out a couple of dams on the Snake. And if they do that, it'd be interesting to see what the data says.
Right.
But they're not going to get rid of the hatcheries.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is fine because they're introducing a lot of fish.
And it's a time game.
Yeah.
You got to see what happens. You got to give everything.
Once again, I'm not here to like say shut down the hatchery either. I just think that from what I saw, there's a lot of factors that go into any kind of population.
And it's something that needs attention, and it's a good thing you're talking about it because I'm sure there's a lot of people that know, maybe Ty knows, my producer, but
it's a pretty small community.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like, I think my big thing is I'm here to advocate for all the people that don't get advocated for in the outdoor space and in the country music space.
Love that.
Like, that is my whole thing. I represent the Northwest. There's not a lot of country artists out there that represent the Northwest.
Very true.
And your average outdoorsman that represents the Northwest is just like the biggest elk hunter, archery, bow hunter of all time, but no one talks about the duck hunting or the fly fishing or anything else that 90% of the people do up there.
Yep.
So, and the majority of the people that hunt where I'm from, they hunt to fill the freezer anyway.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. And that's how it is in most places.
Yep.
Most people can't afford to go out and shoot for antlers.
And okay, so let's talk about that. What did you see? So we'll go back a couple years. 2022. When did you write If I Were the Devil?
I wrote it in 2020.
2020. Okay. During the pandemic?
Mm-hmm.
So do you mind digging into that a little bit on the story behind that? Because I feel like you're talking about advocating in the outdoors and you're talking about what, rural America and all of this. And that's who we are at Country Outdoors. And what you're speaking for right now is really, truly our community. So I'd love for you to kind of dig into that song a little bit and where the story behind that came from and then kind of connect it to what we're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, the story itself for that song, we had basically I had guided for 1 year. I released a record called Life of Rolling Stone, and it had done a lot better than I thought it was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, maybe I could actually do this for a living.
Yeah.
Maybe I could make records and play. So I thought I'll give it a shot. I quit my guiding job. I planned like a pretty short tour for the summer, like pretty much all by myself. And we were supposed to leave in April. Everything shut down. Kind of like March-ish, I want to say.
Yep.
COVID hit, canceled all my shows.
Yep.
And I was like, what am I going to do? I went back to guiding because guiding was still open in the state of Idaho. You could still be outside and, take people on trips.
Yep.
And it was very busy because everywhere people are coming from, California, Seattle,
Yep.
so on, where it was all shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting on my couch. I had a day off. And for some reason, I never watched cable, but I was like, I'm just going to turn on the news. Turn on the news. It was really bad. Obviously, it was just like terrible between just obviously the pandemic. Sorry.
You're good. If it's someone you need to talk to, put them on speaker and I'll say hey.
It's all good. It rings a lot. I'm just going to put it on airplane mode. It's just my mom. It's fine.
Oh, no. We can say hi to Mom.
It's all good. I'll call her back. But I'm sitting on my couch. I turn on cable. It's just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Change the channel. It's another news station. It's the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the amount of negativity. Obviously, we're in a pandemic. Just the whole thing gave me a bad taste in my mouth. And then I remembered when I was a kid, my dad used to show me this thing called "They Fire the Devil" by Paul Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a fireside chat thing. And that kind of came to mind, and I started writing the song. And I feel like from the time I picked up my guitar, from the time I had it done, it was about 25 minutes. Kind of just wrote itself. And I remember as soon as I got done writing it, I was like, I'm never releasing this song. It's hectic. It's crazy. And then probably 4 months later, I had hosted like a little writer's round in my hometown. And I played that song last, and everyone just
freaked out.
They're like, and
They're feeling it.
The guy sitting next to me was like, you have to release that song. I was like, okay. And then, then it becomes the title track for the record, "If I Were the Devil," which we cut that November.
Yeah. So I'm just going to read to you guys. So this paragraph in particular just is like, I feel like this is what we've been living through. And I swear, if we didn't have the outdoors I'll get into that. But if I were the devil, I'd make them fight each other, tooth and nail, hand to hand, find all the sheep, make them stir up the pot, because once the wolves have killed each other, sheep are what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, if anybody has been awake for the last 4 years, this is what we're living in.
Yeah.
Are you a believer, or where is your compass at? Do you believe in a higher power, or?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the way I always describe it is like, I think humans really, really, really have this need to understand everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge disservice to us, especially as a culture, but just as humanity goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just as believable to believe that there's something as if there's nothing. So
yeah.
I would rather pick the other.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather pick that there's definitely something out there,
mm-hmm.
because it's just way too small of a chance that any of this happens anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a believer in some kind of something out there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I always kind of describe it like this. You could have the smartest dog on the planet, the best dog. He does everything you say. He can heel, sit, retrieve, the whole 9 yards. Best dog on the planet. You bring him over, and you're like, I'm going to tell you this joke. It's really funny, and you're going to laugh. No matter how many times you tell that dog the joke, it'll never understand the joke. And I feel like that's humans in a nutshell.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to understand everything, and that's totally okay.
Yeah. And if we can remind ourselves of that enough, it takes some pressure off, but it's pretty difficult to remind yourself of it that when you're in it.
True, but it's also like you as a person, I do believe that beliefs in anything are here. Mm-hmm. And it's something, for me at least, it's not something that I don't want to try and change anyone's opinion, or I don't want to try and tell anybody what to do.
Yep.
My job as a songwriter is to observe everything at a third-party perspective and tell people what I see.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I asked that was because you said it kind of just like came to you in like a kind of 30-minute period.
Oh, yeah.
And which to me feels like it was divinely led, like when an idea comes from something that is not you or is within you. And that's why I had asked that maybe something, a higher power had put that on you, because that was the song that connected you to so many people and so many people to you and to your writing.
Totally. There's me and my producer call it the spotlight of the universe. Mm-hmm. Every now and then something comes around, and I can't describe it because I don't write all the time, but I've written probably 500 songs at this point. And when it shines on you and it's like, all right, it's your time, it just feels like it's like your superpower, and you can just write, and it's great, and everything is awesome. And then it goes away. Yep. And then you're like, well, I don't even know how to write a song anymore. I don't know how to do anything. Then it'll come back around. It's like, here's the spotlight of the universe. Get going, kid. And you start writing again. And I feel like that's so much of the unexplainable. For sure. And that's enough to make me believe in anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
I think that as well, I mean, you can speak to this yourself, but for me certainly, being a sportswoman has helped me see that in my daily life, whether or not I'm walking down the tree and I can see a squirrel in a tree, or I'm in the woods, or I'm in the mountains, or wherever. Like, to me, I feel like it's intentional that some being that is a true artist created this, because it's so magnificent when you are out, when you're in Colorado elk hunting and you're on the top of a mountain and you're looking at all of the detail that is there. It's like, to me, I feel like something that truly loves us and loves art, being an artist, a beautiful artist, created this for us to enjoy.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine. Once again, like, for me, it's the unexplained. It's like, how do you do that? I don't know. I don't even know. I mean, you're so lucky just to be here.
Yeah. And exactly. And that is, I mean, odds wise, the fact that we are even, you, me, the ones that are here.
Yeah. It's incredible.
For sure.
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like that is a part of songwriting too, where you have to, I mean, I think for me, I've always felt like I've lived, I call it the fishbowl. I always feel like I've lived outside the fishbowl, and I've been like looking in the fishbowl forever, just like watching, people swim around the fishbowl. And I've always felt very outside of, not reality, but outside of the world that other people live in, for sure. And so when it comes to songwriting, that's really where I found my place of existence. It was like, oh, you can actually do this, not really as a job, but as like a hobby, and I turned it into a career, but where you can basically just take a breath, notice the detail, observe, and adapt to the situation. And if you write into a song that people can understand and capture emotion, people will resonate with it.
Do you write when you don't feel like writing?
Try not to force songs. Yeah. Because that typically causes writer's block. What I find is that if you end up with like a ton of ideas, or like a ton of melodies, or a ton of riffs or chord progressions that you really like, but you don't feel creative, and you're not feeling that drive to write, you're going to end up with a bunch of stuff that you don't like, because when I'm feeling creative, I also like stuff more.
Yeah.
if I'm feeling run down and tired and so on, I'll feel pretty numb to most things.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure that I'm in a space where I really like what I'm doing. I'm feeling good about the process.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea. I have direction. That stuff is super important. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like when you're going into it right.
Mm-hmm.
And the songs, if a song doesn't write itself in an hour and a half, in my mind,
That's what you've learned.
It's probably not a good song.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to write the way you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you've had that experience now where you know what.
Yeah. And the more you try to force it, the worse it gets.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me this. Are you based here now in Nashville?
Mm-hmm.
How do you find being in a city? Yeah. How's that experience for you? And what do you like? Do you have a goal personally, career-wise, for like not to be based here, to have a home base somewhere back in Idaho? What does that look like for you?
I don't know.
You're just going to let it leave?
Yeah. I mean, I actually don't hate living in Nashville.
Yeah.
I thought I was not going to like it.
Yeah.
But selfishly, the thing that I really like about it is that I'm very accepted here. Like,
Sure.
You know, back home.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I was not accepted at all because I played music, but I was definitely an outlier for playing music.
Really?
Definitely. I mean, Northern Idaho, growing up, the town was, 30, 40,000. Now it's like 85. But growing up, not a lot of people played music. Everyone hunted and fished, and that's what I did too. And, it was sports town and, that kind of stuff.
Was there a little bit of we call it tall poppy syndrome in Australia? When one poppy starts to get a little taller than the others, people try and cut you down? A little bit of that?
No,
or just
not necessarily. It just was like, it's just weird. It just wasn't super normal, especially when I was out playing gigs.
Right.
People were like, what?
Yeah.
I can't hang out tonight, like Friday night. Like, why?
Yeah.
I'm like, I got to go play this bar.
Yeah.
They're like, weird.
Okay.
And also at the time, I played country, which a lot of people don't remember this because now country is so popular. But, at that time, country was not popular.
Was it rock up there?
Well, I mean,
bluegrass?
Like always, like pop, but just in your general populace,
Yeah.
Pop music's big.
Yep.
At the time, rock music was big. And country just wasn't as big. It wasn't like it is now. This is really just pre-country having its huge wide moment.
How do you feel about make sure I word this correctly. How do you feel about the outside influence of pop and how do you feel about Beyonce and company entering country music?
Well, I think for me, I said it about a year and a half ago. I was like, well, country music's getting so wide right now, and almost anything that comes out that is popular is being sold as country music.
Mm-hmm.
And typically when a genre gets really wide, that's not pop. At some point, pop will join. So it's a testament to how big country music is right now.
Yeah.
And how massive the amount of numbers are, to the point where back in LA, a producer is like, we got to do a country record because that's what's selling.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but for people like Post Malone, who's wanted to do a country record for a long time, they gave him an opportunity to do a country record.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's going to be it's that time. It happened in the 90s.
True.
It's happening now.
Yeah.
I'm not shocked by it at all.
Yeah.
I think if anything, it's bringing a lot of eyes to country music, of course. But that being said, typically once pop gets involved, it's only a matter of time before the next thing comes.
Yeah.
Because I don't know the future, obviously, but just from precedent, usually once pop gets involved, that's usually when you hit the peak of whatever that cycle is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really happy that country is cool,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like everyone forgot what it was like to be a country artist from I don't know, 2007 to 2019.
Yeah.
And there's ebbs and flows to it all. There's, I think everybody knows, though, that there are people out there that it's a very wide genre, which means it scales right now from rock to pop. Country's somewhere in the middle. And I do feel like there is a very finite amount of people that are making country music right now.
100%. There's a couple different ways that I feel about it. I think it's great if there are people that have been led through to find good, authentic country music and good and authentic storytelling from the pop world, fan-wise. And then as a mom, it freaks me out because the opposite of that is young girls the fans in country music being led to other music that, might not necessarily, to me, be as good.
Yeah. Well, and it all comes down to just what people want to listen to. I try not to get on a soapbox too much about country music or music in general because I hold value in different things in music than other people do.
Yeah.
I want music, and even anymore, I don't even know if I care that much anymore if it's country music or not. I think I make country music. I'm sure other people would disagree. Sure. Maybe. I don't know. I've made music that's not country.
Yeah.
I've made music that is country.
Yeah.
I like good music.
Right.
So what I'm super into right now is I want a song, just tell a story for longer than 30 seconds.
Yep.
Give me a story that's 3 minutes long. Don't give it away in the first verse and the chorus. That's one right now. 2, I think my biggest thing that I really want to start seeing from a consumer aspect for me to give me hope again and stuff would be I want to see people care a little bit about musicality. I feel like anymore, in general, I feel like music education is super low right now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be like a Mozart piece.
But skill and what we said when I was growing up was learn the craft.
Yeah.
And so I went to acting school and,
right.
You learned how to play your guitar when you were 5 or piano.
Yeah, I started piano 5, drums 10,
and
guitar
that was
13,
it was learn the craft.
Yeah.
But we're in the TikTok influencer world right now where everybody can be the part of it is people wanting so desperately to be famous,
right?
That they're going with trends as well. But I agree with you. I think that I hope it finds its way back to that too.
Yeah, because there's 2 things about it. One, I always say there's 2 kinds of people that move to Nashville. 1, people want to be famous, and 2, people who want to go have an opportunity to make great music.
Yeah.
I don't find so much so, because usually people are obsessed with one or the other. Usually it's get me out of this town. I need to go. I'm bound I got to be famous. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And you can make great music and want to be famous. That's not what I'm saying. Just like you can make great music and also become famous. That's that's kind of the dichotomy of the game. You can do one first or the other first. Neither is easier or harder. I'd never really wanted to be famous, but I've always wanted to make music. So that was my drive to come here, was to make records, and build a career, I guess. Second part of it is something that I just was talking about with a buddy of mine the other day, which is where I was saying, man, it's a real shame anymore that when what's being celebrated is what we are calling success. But there's no more celebration or time or energy given into celebrating dedication. And no one really cares anymore about how you get there.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that anybody who's made it in a bad way, and I don't know anybody who really has. Honestly, everybody that I know that is super famous and great, they're great people. But there's no no one's asking well, how did you get there? Or what is this? Oh, man, you're so good at playing guitar. How did you learn how to play guitar like that?
Yeah.
They're just yes, this is everything.
Have you been watching the Olympics?
Yeah, a little bit.
So it's Simone Baker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she just came out because she was she just won a gold medal, and I guess one of the media had said to her, so what's next? And so she like made a post on her social media saying, can you please stop asking athletes after they've won a medal what's next?
Right.
And that's exactly what you're saying. It's like celebrate the win and ask, how did you get there? Not like, and that's, it's the looking over the shoulder for the next best thing. The grass is always greener, all that. Yeah.
Everyone is so obsessed with the future, but nobody gives a shit about the present. And it's unbelievable to me. Yeah. It's like never happened, I feel like, in the history of things. I mean, maybe, you know, one-offs here and there, but there's always been like a really, even if it was just like a cult fan base, there's always been something towards, you know, work hard, have dedication. And there's a big struggle, I think, right now that we're having where it's, you know, it's mostly my generation where we had the pressure of like, if you don't make X amount of money, if you don't do this thing, then that's how we're going to be proud of you. Not from my family, but I feel like that was the pressure that I see the most is like millennials are like under this pressure to be very successful, but don't have drive to do any X given thing because there was no incentive to celebrate the dedication to a craft. And if it wasn't dedicating yourself to something that was a good opportunity later on, what was the use of doing that thing?
Well, but what I will say is time will tell whether or not this current trend has longevity.
Right.
And so, you know, I think I'm assuming you're a part of the children of the baby boomers. So was I. And so like we had parents that were in their careers for 30, 40 years, never left a job because they had to provide for us and, you know, sweat and all of that. And then you got your first job when you're 11. I was 12 when I got my first job, paid $5 an hour. Same thing, all of that. So time will tell whether or not this instant career has long, who knows?
And for me, it's like I would like to see just
good stuff, just good stuff,
just a
coming
blend.
In. Yeah.
Like because it's not like overnight success has ever been. It's been around.
Yeah,
that's always been a thing.
Yeah,
and that's great because once again, it's not so much how you make it; it's what you do when you get there. It's like that's always kind of been a sentiment to things, but it's where is the appreciation for dedication for craft? And I'm not even saying that's for me. It's just there's so many people out there that are so talented and they've dedicated so much time to this thing. And so many people just don't. I mean, they just scroll past it.
Yep.
It's just crazy to me.
So if you're watching, dig a little deeper, guys. Yeah.
Before you move completely on Simone Biles, not Baker.
Yeah. Oh, Simone Biles. Okay.
Just
yeah.
to let you know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Simone Biles did an interview recently, and she said, "Can you please stop asking athletes what's next?" Yeah. So talking about that, your song "Boy and a Bird Dog," because we're talking about good stuff out there. So I'm going to play this for everyone because it's so good. And I wanted to talk about your album covers and how you dedicate those to your love of the outdoors as well. And I'm going to let the lyrics of this just play off of. Here it is. Okay. And I want to hear the song behind it because I'm assuming there's a good.
Got my granddaddy shotgun in old 410. He's getting on a sand with his nose in the wind. Bologna and bread on an old pine log. Just a boy living large with his old bird dog.
So good. Okay, firstly, the first time I heard that, I cracked up because we always talk about bologna on a sandwich. My husband loves it, and I cannot stand it, and I think it's so gross. But I feel like it's one of those things that, like, again, nostalgia, like growing up, going out to the woods with your dad or with your grandpa or whoever. Yeah. So is that an actual story from your life, or what's the story behind that?
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty much cut and paste for me. So the song comes along because, once again, I was huge into bird dogs, especially labs. I got this lab when I was like 14 years old. I bought her at a show of mine with the gig money that I made. And the lab, my dad had in his life, he had 14 labs, including mine. So he had a lot of dogs in his life, and he always had bird dogs. And the one we had at the time was getting old, and I could hear him. I was only 14, but I could hear him every day be like, "Well, we're gonna have to look into getting a new dog soon, just because Cinder's probably gonna retire and blah blah blah." And so I'm like, I can solve this problem right now. I'll just buy a dog with my gig money, and he'll be super excited about it. He was not super excited about it. He was like, "You bought a dog?"
We've already got how many did you have at the time?
Well, we had 2.
Oh, okay.
This is our 3rd, and it was a puppy,
Yeah, you got to go through the whole process again.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, you bought a dog," and he wasn't like mad. He wasn't super excited about it. I'll just say that. But he understood. So I got the dog, and now it's time to train the dog, and the dog can't swim. It doesn't have a nose. It's not birdie.
Oh boy.
It's just kind of like a dog. And, so my dad takes it out to this trainer, and we go out we drop the dog off, we leave. It's a month-long training process. We get a phone call from the guy, and he's like, "Pat, I need you and your son to come out here. You got to see this." So we go out to the training facility, and he throws the bird dummy with a bunch of feathers on it, and the dog just doesn't care. The dog had no instinct at all. So he gave my dad the deposit back, and he said, "Here, go buy a new dog." And I'm like, "That's not happening." I'm like, "I'll train the dog myself." And I did. And I spent, we were hunting 50 days a year, 40 to 50 days a year. It's a long season. So I was getting her a lot of reps. I'd train her every single day after school. It was a process, but I learned how to train dogs. And so then I kind of, and I had some off time. I'd help people train dogs a little bit, and she ended up being an amazing.
What was her name?
Molly.
Oh, my daughter's name is Molly.
Oh, well, that's a
there
great
you
name.
Go.
Yeah, and she ended up being an amazing dog. But we had to put her down when I was 20. She was 9, so I'd been 23. And I was guiding and everything at the time, and I put her down. A year later, I had moved to Nashville. It's kind of like everything happened at once kind of situation.
Yep.
And we were going to this record, and I really wanted to write a song for her, a dog song. But I was like, man, I can't write the sad dog song because I would never be able to play that song, ever. So I got together with a buddy of mine, and I was like, hey, I want to write a song that's not sad dog song. And he's like, well, why don't we just write about the initial phase of getting a dog, which is the part that everyone loves the most. And it doesn't have to be sad at all. It just needs to be completely, tongue in cheek, just fun, what it was like when you were a kid.
Yep.
So you're just describing the first 2 years with the dog. And it was great because I was, 15, 16. I had my driver's license. We take the dog. I just go out grouse hunting and whatever. So it was first found independence, my first dog, that whole thing. And yeah, my first shotgun was a break action, single shot H&R 410.
Yeah.
And I shot my first turkey with that and went duck hunting with it. And, it's funny though. That is the number one thing about that song that I just get absolutely roasted in the comment section about.
What?
Everybody's like, oh, a 410? You can't kill anything with a 410.
Hey.
Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, you obviously have never, ever hunted or used a 410 or
100%.
You obviously don't know.
Well, so my husband killed a turkey, and I'll put this up there. So any of y'all who had commented on Colby's album cover or song there and making a negative comment, so Zach killed a couple years ago with his granddaddy's 410 a turkey up in Kansas.
Yeah.
And that was a special one for him as well. And I think there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of girls and guys out there that can relate to that. It's a cool,
totally.
really, really cool song.
I mean, that in my mind too, it's there's nothing more. Because if any more too, if the 410s are being phased out and everyone's just getting a 20 gauge or a 12 gauge when they're a kid, what's the point?
Yeah.
if you can't hit someone with a 410 in one shot, you probably can't hit it with a 20 gauge in 3 shots. So, for me, it's like start with the basics.
Yep.
Start with, your boat anchor of a shotgun. That's a single shot 410 that nobody really wants.
Yeah.
But that's the thing.
I think every kid should come up on a 410.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Well, the baby first, and then the 410.
Yeah, but like that is the move.
Yeah.
You just, it's also, like I was 11 years old when I shot my first turkey. I had, just gone to hunter safety school, and like obviously I knew gun safety, but if I now were to take an 11-year-old out hunting, I wouldn't want him to have 3 turkey loads and a 12 gauge.
Yeah.
One shot's plenty safe enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's plenty.
That is very, very true. So what does the rest of the fall look like for you hunting wise? Have you got any plans? So now that you're making a bit of money, have you got an elk hunt planned?
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, I'm gonna try. I actually want to get into a duck blind probably around maybe just after Thanksgiving, and I'll go back up north and do it. And try to probably do, if I can get there when the northerns are there, I could do 3-4 days in a row.
Nice.
All day long. But if not, then I'll probably have to wait till late December and do either like a big lake, like we'll hunt on the main lake, do like a big goose hunt, or I'll try to get into like a creek and do a mallard hunt.
And is that like a spot that you and your buddies go, or somewhere you go by yourself, or like what does that look like?
Oh, I like hunting with people.
Yeah.
Like duck hunting alone is
cool.
so just brutal.
Yeah.
I like fishing by myself a lot though.
Yeah. That makes sense.
That's a total reset. But duck hunting alone is just miserable. There's too many things to do. I mean, I don't want to haul 6 dozen decoys in a boat by myself.
Yeah.
Plus, it's kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
You're in cold temps, over water. A lot of things can happen.
So are they like old buddies from home that you go with?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but now life goes on and everyone's got jobs and everyone's busy. And the guy that I spent the most time with hunting and fishing, he doesn't even live up there anymore, just like myself. And so whenever we can get together and go, it's really special. And I think, I don't know, I thought about trying to get some land down here and set up my own hunts and do that thing, but Jesus.
Oh my gosh. Good luck, because I've lived here for 8 years and I haven't been able to find land.
Just like I spent my whole life learning how to duck hunt up there. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out how to do it down here.
Yeah, and it is completely different. I will say though, I know earlier you said like it's very different. A cold morning down here though is freezing because of the humidity. Yep. Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. But I know it's not as cold as where you are, but like if you're from the south and you're used to the warm weather, a cold morning, it's pretty bad.
35 and humid is way worse than -5.
For sure. Yeah.
Like, I remember when we very first moved down here, it was like January. I've never been in the South in my life. And I drove down here.
You moved here before? You moved here to live here and you'd never visited?
Not even once.
Holy guacamole.
Well, that's actually not true. I had been here. That's a lie. I'd been here a couple times, flown in, flown out, but it was always like during the summer.
Come in for meeting.
Yeah,
CMA
just
Fest
like,
or whatever.
Yeah, because I very first came to Nashville, it would have been July, and I moved here in January, and then I was still living in Idaho, so I'd only come down a couple times. Drove down though. And I remember there was a bar that was like maybe 3/4 of a mile from my house, and me and the band were going to walk to the bar and have a drink. And it was probably 35 degrees outside at night, and it was
so
wet.
Cold. Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, we're never walking again. I've never been that cold. It's just like your bones are cold.
It's true. It's a lot drier, and that's like when you're that's why places like Jackson Hole and all of that are so popular, because you can just walk around in that. And
it's like, it's fine. It's cold, but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But it's cold is cold. I just can't do the heat. That's what kills me. I was bred for the cold. I mean, you got 2 seasons in Idaho. You got construction and winter. That's it. So you get 4 months of summer, and you get, 8 months of sub 50 temps. That's like what I'm used to. Yeah. Down here, oh my God.
It's another breed.
Holy shit.
Yeah. You got to get a boat.
I know. Well, yeah. I mean, right now I spend so much time in the van, but it seems like I just drive everywhere that's really hot.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
I'm out in Arizona
there's a heat
every
bubble.
weekend.
There's a heat bubble in Texas. So that's where I am at that exact time. I'm like, oh, there's a heat bubble in the Southeast. I'm home, or
Yeah. So I know you don't like to make plans, but if you could kind of look at like a goal, I know it's probably like between fly fishing and your career, is there somewhere in the middle for both of that for you that it's like a direction that you're heading?
Yeah, I think so. The way I look at it is I dedicated probably 15 years to fly fishing and duck hunting.
Yep.
And then there was a split in my life where I needed to dedicate, I'm in truly year 2 of dedicating full time to music. I'm on my 5th record, but like when I was doing the 3 records previously, we were barely touring. I was still a fly fishing guide.
Yeah. Okay.
So really like only in my 2nd year of dedicating my time to this.
You're not burnt out yet.
No, definitely not. And honestly, by the time I got out of fly fishing, I was a little bit burned out by it. I was doing it a lot, and I was like, what's next? What is the thing that I need to do next? And music gave me that outlet.
That's good.
But obviously now I miss it a lot. But the goal is that you dedicate enough time to basically the career, work really hard, then you get to end up potentially playing less shows a year with more impact. So if you can get to the point where you're playing 3 times a week and you're on the bus and you just have a lot more time for yourself, then I can start mixing in fly fishing days.
And is the goal to like have a big farm, like all this stuff, or like what is the goal?
My goal would probably be to have a spot up in Idaho that I would spend, the majority of the off season at, where I can duck hunt, steelhead, fly fish, do everything I need to do. Also, if I have a spot like that, if I had 4 or 5 days off, I could fly home, do that for a couple of days, fly back.
Yeah.
Just having the option there would be great.
Yeah.
I think I would love to do more outdoor activities in the Southeast, but I don't think, yes, I know I need to take you up on that. But I don't think I want to have a spot down here dedicated towards it.
Yeah.
I think for me, it would look like going out with you guys to do a turkey hunt.
Yeah.
Or going to Arkansas and shooting ducks in Arkansas at a club.
Yeah.
But for me to like dedicate once again all this time to then like relearning how to do it down here.
Yeah.
When I know how to do it well up there.
And you love it.
And it's not like that. I mean, the duck hunting up there is actually pretty good.
And you got to create that steelhead breeding spot on your own property.
I know,
like
right?
That's the goal, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Catch them. I mean, I'd love to have a spot on the Snake. I think that's another goal of mine. I'd love, because
little fish camp.
Yeah, because especially in the winter, if you don't have the cabin, you're constantly having to driving back into Lewiston and stay, or you have to wall tent, which is really fun, but obviously kind of a pain.
Yeah. So is getting land access along the Snake, it would be pretty tricky, right? No?
Idaho's a high watermark state, so water is completely public, and as long as you're below the high watermark.
But buying land on the Snake.
Yeah, I mean it's not cheap, but Idaho is the majority of Idaho is public land, so like access is really easy. It's like one of the most outdoor friendly states in the country.
Okay. Well, look, we might have to make a trade where we'll bring you on a hunt if we can come out, and I know I probably won't ever catch a steelhead, but even if I could see one, would love to come and document that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my big goals is I would really like to make a fly fishing film and enter it into FT3 for
love that
Idaho steelhead, because it's once again
and bringing awareness to it more.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't realize this either, but like when it comes to Montana, Colorado, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and I'll just throw Utah in there too.
Yep.
People are always like, well, Idaho doesn't have any blue ribbon streams. And I'm like, well, blue ribbon along with gold medal, both of those were invented by Montana and Colorado government, by the state, by their fishing game, by their DNR, to give. They're like, these are the best rivers to fish in Montana. This is the blue ribbon Montana River, like it's like the Madison and the Missouri and so on, and that was like their way to tell people to go there.
Yeah.
Idaho never labeled any of their rivers anything.
Yeah.
Because Idaho is also very like
humble.
Well, it's also just like a state. Idaho has a personality of like, get out of my state.
Yeah.
Like, don't come here.
Yeah.
It's kind of the personality trait that Idaho does have. And now obviously it's being discovered and like everyone's going there and that's great. But there, you know, I remember as a guide all the time, people would be like, so what's your Blue Ribbon River here? Like, you got to go to Montana for Blue Ribbon.
Yeah, go on. It's like that scene in Elf, World's Best Cup of Coffee.
Yeah. It's like it's Montana's thing.
Yeah.
Just like it is Colorado's thing. There's no gold medal streams or gold streams in Montana either, you know? So there's a lot of stuff about out there right now that I think a lot of people, and it's no fault of their own, is very confused about.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I know that this is better than that. It's like, no, they're just different.
Sure.
You just got to know what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Awesome. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm so glad you were able to come in, and we'll definitely have to get together for sure on a hunt.
Yes.
Before you leave, Ty has got a couple. This is just a bit of fun where he's gonna show us a photo.
Okay.
And you've got to say what it is, and I have to say what it is.
Want me to start from the top?
Yeah.
Go through all of them?
Yeah.
Oh God.
I'll scoot a little closer for you.
Oh boy. Tinfoil.
Aluminium.
Oh boy. Weed whacker.
Whippersnipper.
Really? Gas station?
Servo.
A what?
A servo. Service station.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Breakdown?
I think it's meant to be the bonnet. The what is that?
Is it the semi or is it the?
I think it's the, what do you call it? We say bonnet in Australia. The hood.
Hood?
Yeah.
Hood of a car? Is that what we're looking for?
A crash truck.
Yeah, off the hood. I mean, this is a tough one. I would call this Kleenex, but a lot of people get up.
Tissue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, that's a lot of people get upset about
A
that
tissue
one.
for your issue.
Biscuit.
Scone.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of figured that was gonna be that. Okay. Yeah. This is gonna be the switch. I'd call that a cookie.
Bicky.
Like a biscuit, but
A bicky.
Oh boy. The extra. It's like the extra specific. Underwear?
Yeah, knickers.
Yeah.
Knickers.
I think that might be the last one. Yep.
Nice.
That was good.
Awesome.
That's funny. I like that.
Well, I'm so glad we got to chat. It was awesome to have you
thanks
in
for having
here.
me on.
Yeah,
Seriously,
for sure.
my pleasure.
So you're on the Colby Acuff Tour 2024. Where is the next stop, and where can people find you?
So, I mean, this fall we're gonna go out with like Whiskey Myers and whatnot. But we're always on tour is kind of what I always say. So 2024 tour, you can always find anything you need at colbyacuff.com. If you look up Colby Acuff on any social media or Spotify or any platform that you like to listen to music on, you can find me there. And we have obviously a lot of shows left. We play until about November 23rd of this year. Get your tickets at colbyacuff.com. And then make sure you follow for the upcoming tour in 2025.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.